My name, like I said, is Celine Gamble, and I am the Native Oyster Network Coordinator for UK and Ireland Network, which is co-run by the Zoological Society of London and the University of Portsmouth, so Alison Debney and Joanne Preston. Um, and we've been working on a Native Oyster Restoration Handbook, which has been commissioned by the Environment Agency. And we've also been working closely with Feline and NORA to have input from a European context as well in certain chapters. So today I would like to kind of provide an initial overview of the engagement tools that we've kind of scoped out through a series of webinars from our network members to kind of provide a whole chapter. And I'm just going to do a little introduction into the handbook, just so if people haven't already seen what we're kind of doing, you can kind of get an idea. So on the screen, I've just provided a little flow chart of the existing handbooks that are feeding into this new Native Oyster Restoration Handbook. So some of you may have seen the Restoration Guideline for Shellfish Reefs by Fitzsimmons et al. 2019. If you haven't already, I would really recommend having a read through, because the engagement, I can't remember exactly what chapter it's called, but the engagement chapter in this handbook is excellent. And so in the UK and Ireland Restoration Handbook, we're trying to build upon that kind of global recommendation, global information in this handbook, and kind of bring it to a UK and Ireland context. So a lot of the examples that we have in this chapter at the moment are UK and Ireland kind of relevant. So that's kind of what we're producing. You can see that the contents of the handbook, I won't run through everything else, but essentially it will cover an introduction to native oyster restoration, everything to do with getting started, restoration methods in practice, biosecurity in native oyster restoration, and the final chapter will be public engagement and communication for restoration projects. So I'm going to run through, I've broken up like a massive table that we've kind of captured all this information in, and sorry, it's a bit clunky, but it's just captured all the information that's been gathered so far, and it is still work in progress. So if anyone has any feedback, either kind of throughout, feel free to interrupt, or at the end. I'd be really grateful for if there's any gaps that you see missing, or case studies or kind of information that I've captured that you'd kind of hope to build upon. So for each, sorry, I'm just going to move this out of the way. So for each engagement tool, we've separated it. Oh, I should have said, actually, sorry, I'm the kind of section or chapter lead for this chapter is both myself and Luke Helmer, which was on the first slide, but I forgot to mention. So Luke and I are working together to produce this chapter of the handbook. So for each engagement tool, we've separated it out by delivery and mechanism, audience, an idea of the cost of each kind of engagement tool, and an idea of time requirement as well. I won't go too detailed into educational outreach, because I feel like the previous two presentations has captured that really well. But I would say that there's a new project in partnership with the Blue Marine Foundation, ZSL, and British Marine, which hasn't been announced yet due to the COVID-19 situation. But I will say that the project is 3 years long, and during those 3 years, we're aiming to reach 12,000 school children. And part of the key activities, so there's 3 main activities. The first 2, restoration kind of goals, but then the third is oyster love. So it includes both public engagement and an educational kind of program of outreach, and it's using the expertise gained from the Blue Marine Foundation that you saw from Luke, but also from the ZSL Education Department. So for those of you that don't know, the ZSL has 2 zoos in England, so London Zoo and Whipsnade Zoo, and they have school visits to the zoos all day, every day, as long as it's open. I suppose not on weekends, but they're well versed in working with teachers to develop programs of school outreach materials in line with the different key stages. So we've got them on board, and we've kind of budgeted for their time within the project. So they'll be spending time with us to develop. I think at the moment it's going to be mainly primary school. So I think key stages 2 to 6. But having seen Karina's details about the secondary school, I think there's some really exciting stuff that we can do there as well. And so with this new project, I'd be really keen to share these materials within this working group through the UK network and NORA. The idea is that we're producing new materials that don't really have a particular organizational owner, so it will be part of this new project, but we want other people to use them, download them, etc. So that's why we're creating new materials, so that it's easy to kind of distribute, and we're more than happy for any project to, you know, take them and use them as they wish. So that's what we're doing with that new project. So that's kind of why I'm really excited about this working group and keen to contribute from that new project. And it starts in June, and the first kind of educational outreach we'll be doing will be, fingers crossed, November time. So we should have some kind of materials to share at the NORA conference. So yeah, so that's education. I'll just quickly run through the other kind of engagement tools that we've outlined in this chapter. So we've also mentioned community engagement and the importance of course, engaging with the local community, and kind of how this can work in terms of shell recycling. I feel like this is something in the US and Australia that's happened really successfully, but in the UK and Ireland, we're definitely, you know, reaching barriers when it comes to kind of facilitating this, whether it be through regulations, licenses and permissions. But I think that's a really great way of engaging people and explaining the kind of connectivity of the culture material and how we can reuse waste product, etc. So I think Luke mentioned that obviously the Blue Marine Foundation and the Solent project are trying to scope this out, and that is definitely something within the new project that we want to try and develop, and we're trying to crack the code to make it easier for other projects to do so as well. I like this hint and tip someone's written in: providing basics such as tea, coffee and biscuits is a long way of boosting morale and keeping volunteers going. So I think that's a great top tip. And in terms of cost and time, I think it's relatively low. I mean, I feel like an initial time investment to, you know, scope out those local community groups, but once on board, I think they can very much become part of the kind of running of the project. And I know this works very successfully in a range of different projects in the UK and Ireland. So another engagement tool is through festivals. I know in the UK, and I'm sure in other European countries as well, there's quite a focus on scientific festivals. So here in the UK, we've got New Scientist Live, which is basically in the London Excel Centre. They take over the Excel Centre for a week, and they have all kind of STEM related subjects presenting on various different topics. And we were given a space through ZSL for the kind of Earth section, so Earth Zone. One thing I would say with this kind of outreach festival, it can be quite expensive to get an exhibitor's pitch. So we actually paired up with another organisation, so BIATSA and IATSA. It's like the British and Irish Association for Zoos and Aquarium, and we kind of shared the exhibition cost to kind of get the stall, and then we split it over the few days. So another tip, if there's any super expensive festivals or scientific festivals where, you know, there's a huge footfall, there was so many people that came through the doors, so it was worth it in terms of that. But yeah, maybe splitting the cost with another organization seemed to be a good idea. I know that other festivals, including seafood festivals, talking to people that are already interested in seafood and in their local area, for example. I've got an example here of a community festival. I think that might be a county fair in the Solent. And again, the importance of kind of pop-up banners and providing that visual display of information as well. I think that's really helpful in terms of drawing people in and engaging perhaps the audience, to the general public who might not have seen the project before. The cost, like I said, the cost sometimes of getting a pitch at a larger kind of scientific festival can be expensive, but when it comes to kind of community or county fairs, music festivals, seafood festivals, it can be relatively low, perhaps an initial kind of investment of those materials to kind of, like I say, create that that kind of stand, as it were. And again, same with time. I think an initial time investment of producing those materials, but once those materials are up and running, it's more just making sure that you have that regular kind of spot at an outreach festival. So another engagement tool, so working with volunteers, training citizen science, and kind of securing work experience students. I know this has worked really well with the Loch Craignich project in Scotland. It's one of the key partners is the Chroma volunteers, and I know that they have kind of fully embedded their volunteers within the delivery of their project. So this can be through site visits, so helping with restoration activities, whether it's maintaining these the oyster nurseries that you can see in this picture, or I know that I've helped with the Solent kind of like scrubbing of oysters and various different elements of a kind of a restoration activity. And I think it provides, similar to the educational outreach, but it provides that really kind of hands-on experience and people feel part of the project as well. In terms of the audience, so general public, university students and community partnerships, and other than kind of, you know, perhaps covering expenses and travel, again, relatively low cost in terms of the kind of level of engagement and also support back into the project as well. And the time commitment again can range depending on kind of which group you're engaging with. So for example, work experience or university students could take a little bit more of a time and investment in terms of you know, fully inducting them into the project and ensuring that what they're researching or involved with is kind of in line with the project. But when it comes to volunteers, you know, after a kind of quick induction of briefing, you know, it's not too kind of time constraining. So another engagement tool, which I think works really great, and I'm really impressed by all the infographics that are going around, and quite sad that I've not got any of the from the UK and Ireland network. But I feel like infographics, both online and when delivering educational outreach through a festival or you know, in an education session, I think this really helps bring a project to life, and it really helps kind of people visually see what oysters can do. So this infographic on the right, I think from the US, kind of displaying what 1 hectare of oyster reef would do, and I think that's really, really great in terms of communicating to the general public, but personally as well when it comes to talking to funders. I think having it visually displayed like that can be really, really great way of just capturing that information. And once produced, there are simple ways of producing them. I've seen a few kind of online platforms called Easel and Canva, where you could perhaps, you know, develop them yourself or using existing infographics as well. And then you can use them to display on boards or pull up banners on social media, websites, and also outreach presentations as well. The cost, I think the cost can vary. So I think simple infographics can be really powerful, but also I've seen a few infographics with the Solent project and a few others as well, when they've embedded their infographics within the local community kind of information. So they've kind of provided a map displaying where their project is and kind of showcasing, in this case with the Solent, so supporting fishermen and kind of adding that in the infographic. I think that takes a bit more time requirement and design, but I think it's really helpful in terms of capturing the essence of the project within that infographic as well. And then time as well. So I suppose if you're producing them yourself, it can be quite timely. But again, once you have them, I think it's important to make sure they can be kind of living and don't get out of date too quickly. So I think that can be really effective as well. So another engagement tool that some projects, I know that both the NORA and UK network have a website that's developed, but there have been a few projects in the UK and Ireland that have their own web page as well, some ranging in complexity. So the Essex project, Essex Native Oyster Restoration Project has one. The Native Oyster Restoration Initiative Ireland has one. I know that the Solent Restoration Project has a web page on the Blue Marine Foundation website, and I think it's really great in providing that landing page online. So if a general public or someone has seen the volunteers or kind of staff out on the pontoons working, they Google that, you know, Solent Oyster Restoration Project, they can see everything about the project. So I think if it's possible and people have the kind of capacity to produce a website or a web page, I think this can be really, really positive and really help lift the project kind of online and have that online presence. So how this can be delivered, through the UK network, we use WordPress, and I edit it myself. I did get some help and support from the ZSL kind of web team to create the website initially, but I would say that updating WordPress isn't too arduous, as long as it's not something too complicated. I don't understand all the codes and things, but there are a lot of online kind of resources on how to update this as well. And I think kind of updating regularly with lots of images and regular updates. And if a project doesn't have capacity to do this themselves, I would say that the NORA and the UK network, I'm always looking for content. I think Feline's the same, you know, providing a news update or kind of updating the images, kind of rolling through. It's something that I'm always looking for, and always kind of willing to add on these kind of web pages. So in terms of the audience for websites and web pages, I think the general public's great, but also public project partners and the scientific community as well. And also I would say funders. I know the funder of the UK and Ireland network regularly goes onto our website, and I've provided that link when people have got in touch asking, you know, what's going on in the UK and Ireland. I send this web page of all the with a map of all the UK projects, and it just gives someone kind of a landing page to flick through all the projects and see exactly what's going on with that national picture. So I would say with WordPress, it is free on various different complexities of the application. If you get help to begin with, then of course there's an initial kind of cost investment as well. Same with time. I think the initial investment is quite large in getting it up and running. And then once it's running, there is a continuous time investment, but that can be lowered, especially if you've got other kind of commitments. You can kind of perhaps update quarterly or as kind of possible within capacity. So another engagement tool is social media. So I think Corinna mentioned about social media and kind of gaining expertise. So I actually did my master's thesis on using social media to communicate ocean optimism and kind of marine science. So it's something that I'm really excited about. And within my role, I don't manage to actually do enough of it because I've got other things to do, but I'm definitely willing and very happy to feed into social media because so I did an analysis between the different platforms and how they could be used to change perceptions and what's best in terms of engagement. So kind of segmenting the different social media platforms. So within this area of the handbook, actually before I go into that, I've just put the Native Oyster Network and NORA handles there, and if people aren't already following those kind of social media platforms, I'd really recommend it because you can see everything that's going on in the UK and Europe, and I'm always retweeting projects when they kind of tag us in. And even if the project itself doesn't have its own Twitter feed, if you have a personal Twitter account, I would really encourage people to tweet updates about the project. And also when it comes to outreach and engagement, maybe perhaps not if you don't obviously have permissions of pictures of children, I wouldn't recommend that. But if at a festival or if you have a stand, I would really kind of encourage getting that online because it can really boost, you put the work in to get there and produce the materials, so why not share it online to kind of boost that reach even further. One thing as well that I tried when I first started the network was to get oh sorry, I need to cough. Sorry about that, got a tickle in my throat. I wanted to try to establish a kind of Twitter like hashtag handle, which never really took off. So if the NORA network wants to kind of work together and we can have a think maybe as part of this working group of a suitable hashtag, because so far I've just been encouraging people to use hashtag Native Oyster. So that when you search Native Oyster, everything comes up with that same hashtag. But I'm aware that that's not the most engaging of hashtags and it's not the most creative or exciting, but it is simple. So kind of creating a hashtag that's small enough, but engaging and exciting. So another one that we use, and I think in the States and Australia, they've been using Oyster Love as well. So maybe that's a good one. But I don't know, I think as a community, perhaps we can come up with a cool hashtag, and so everyone's kind of capturing that information. So yes, so delivery and mechanism, of course, online, and hints and tips include, follow the example of other kind of Twitter pages. I know that's what I do. The Marine Conservation Society in the UK is a really good example. I think they do a really good job of communicating online, and I just so in the Native Oyster Network, we launched a Native Oyster Quest where we were on the hunt for Native Oyster images, which I'm going to go on to speak about in a few more slides. But I just approached the Marine Conservation Society to ask if they would share the content, and they were more than happy to. And they have 50,000 followers. So I don't know exactly the reach that we gained through engaging with them, but I know that it was significant. So if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you've got a particular kind of, restoration activity or online resources, connecting with societies or organizations that have a large following, it can be useful. Other kind of hints and tips include using online applications such as Hootsuite, so they can tweet automatically for you. You just schedule it in. And you can also use online platforms to search for powerful hashtags. So, for example, like Motivation Monday or Friday Feeling, all those kind of, makes me cringe a little bit, but it can reach kind of different people to kind of the normal spheres that perhaps sometimes the Twitter pages can become a bit of an echo chamber. So kind of mixing it up, I think, really can help reach different audiences. So like I said, general public, I think the scientific community, especially with my thesis I was talking about, I think Twitter is largely for the scientific community, and you probably won't reach kind of perhaps the general public maybe will through Facebook or Instagram. So it's worth kind of thinking about your audience that you're trying to reach and kind of tailoring your messages between those different platforms. So when it comes to cost, of course, design costs associated with producing infographics, if you have developed that, but also just taking photos on your mobile phone and sharing them and kind of regular updates, it can take some time and thought, especially if you've got a lot on your plate, but I would say that it's really it's worth it if you can kind of document that progress. And it can be used for other things. So I know certainly for myself through the UK and Ireland network, I often go back through the Twitter page when it comes to reporting back to our funder, or when it comes to kind of monthly updates through ZSL. I just go through my Twitter page and take all the pictures back and kind of summarize what I wrote, and it can be helpful for other things as well. So it's not just for that one purpose. So traditional media, so both kind of national and regional press, I think it's a bit difficult one for me to talk about because at ZSL we've got a press team that help us, but I know that kind of, so for example, the Humber project in northeast England, I don't believe that they had a press team put together a press release, and I think it was found kind of organically through a journalist. So I think it is possible for projects to go nationally on BBC without a press team. But kind of having that online presence, or kind of getting that information out there and people knowing about the restoration activities that are going on, I think is really helpful. So then someone can come down and perhaps film it as well. So the different methods include TV, paper, radio, celebrity endorsement. I know that the Blue Marine Foundation have been really kind of successful with this. Lewis Pugh, the ocean ambassador, UN ambassador of the ocean, I think visited the Solent Oyster Restoration Project on his swim around the UK. And that was filmed on Sky News. And then Ben Fogle as well with the Solent Project. I know that the Blue Marine Foundation have access, I'm not going to try and say the name because I think I'll get it wrong, but I know that they have support from a PR agency. So that's really kind of helped get that celebrity endorsement. And I do think that helps it kind of reach the general public and people get excited about the project as well. And hints and tips include trying to, get some ambassadors. I know that the strategy with this new project that's starting in June, we're going to try and get local ambassadors to kind of community ambassadors to get people excited about the project. And I think that can go a long way as well. So the audience, of course, for the traditional media, I would say more the general public, and perhaps not audiences that you reach every day. And there's usually no cost involved. I know that when the press come and film in Essex for the Essex project, they often cover the costs of staff travel or kind of any costs in JAWS. So it definitely isn't a cost necessarily for the project. And then time commitment, yeah, it can kind of depend on the level of support that you're providing for that journalist. I have often been down to Essex, and sometimes the journalist is there all day trying to get information, and so that can be quite arduous. But if you've got a kind of particular activity or restoration activity that you're kind of carrying out that day, you can kind of complete that activity and they can just, you know, slot into the schedule. But I think it depends, of course, depending on the journalist. So another engagement tool, newsletters. So I know that with NORA and the UK network, well, with the UK network, we send out quarterly newsletters based on kind of updates from projects. But I have seen, I think with the Billion Oyster project, they have a kind of project newsletter. And I think this could be perhaps instead of a web page or something like that. I would definitely, you know, not recommend, you know, one project doing all of these things. These are just a selection of tools available. But I think a newsletter is quite a nice way, perhaps if there's a lot of project partners or a lot of volunteers, a way of kind of keeping people up to date. And it can be easy. You know, I use MailChimp. And it's very easy just to drag and drop around. But again, depending on time availability, it can be quite time consuming, but it can be an effective way of keeping people up to date. So it, again, depends on, you know, what you're trying to get out of the particular engagement. And I meant to say this at the beginning, but at the beginning of this chapter, we're going to have information all about kind of identifying your audience, kind of segmenting that audience, developing a communication strategy, and then using that information to then choose which of these engagement tools is most useful. So like I said, we wouldn't recommend that someone's doing all of these, or else you'd be spending all your time on outreach. And then I think this is one of the, this is the final engagement tool. So media and images and video. So I think, as Feline mentioned at the beginning, kind of trying to get someone excited about something that they maybe have not seen, or you know, you can't necessarily take them to the oyster if it's if the tide's in. So getting suitable images and video, I think, is really, really powerful, and it's something that as the UK and Ireland network, we don't have enough images, so we're often using the same images over and over again in our presentations and online. So I would encourage, you know, projects to take images as they go along. And also, I think with my personal experience, I have so many images of oysters out of the water, or perhaps like on a seafood platter, and it's quite hard to obviously communicate using those images. So I think there's an image down there, the Steph Prouveau. I think he's got some amazing images, and I've asked for his permission to use them through the UK and Ireland network, and kind of having the kind of almost clump like reef structure. I think it really goes a long way in communicating, you know, about the importance of the project. So if anyone, you know, is a diver, or whilst they're kind of carrying out restoration activities, please take images and videos. There's so many people that are kind of after using them. So another element as well is kind of using film. So that's something that I've not managed to do through the network, and I don't think Essex project has managed to make its own film yet, but I know that the Deep project, through the collaboration with Glenmorangie, well, partnership with Glenmorangie and the Marine Conservation Society, have produced some really kind of audio-visual experience videos on YouTube, and I think it does really get people excited. So if when planning a project, if there's scope to include budget to produce a film, an outreach film, then I think it can be quite powerful. But yeah, it can be quite costly, especially producing a documentary or film. And one way of kind of maybe overcoming this is seeking out local university or college students that have to produce a media project as part of their degree. I know that there's people, you know, students, especially down in Cornwall in the UK, that are, you know, their third year final project is producing a film, a docu-film, and so they're looking for content. So reaching out to them could be a good idea as well. And audience we've identified include the general public, funders. I know that the I think Roger Proudfoot, as part of the Environment Agency, gets very excited from the deep videos as well. So I think it can, you know, can reach not just the general public, it can reach a range of different government agencies as well. I think it can also kind of get volunteers excited and feel like they're part of something as well. And yeah, so in March, we launched the Native Oyster Quest through the UK and Island Network. And that was basically to try and fill the gap of lack of images. And it is open to everyone. We've kind of communicated it as part of the UK and Island Network, but it is open, you know, throughout Europe. And I think, you know, the more images we can gather, the better. So if there's anyone interested, all you have to do is search Native Oyster Quest, and you can find all the details there as well. And we've kind of tried to kind of get involved with diving communities around the UK coastline and use that as a way of kind of engaging with them and kind of communicating wider native oyster restoration. So kind of launched a photography campaign as well. So that was everything in the chapter. The chapter is longer than that, but that's kind of, for now, I think everything that's ready to share. But it'd be really interesting moving forward as part of this working group to kind of hear ideas and if there's any gaps with anything that I shared. And I look forward to kind of working as part of this group as well.